Happy Wednesday to everyone. I think everybody is in this date time. If you haven't added your name to the attendee section of the meeting doc, please do. Also, if you have any additional business, feel free to tack it on the end of the agenda there. All right. First things first, let's take a quick look at the 1.8 planning doc. Garrett, did you want to quickly go over this?
Sure. I figured we could just go through briefly and talk about some of the different ones. I've been working on metrics. I added a link to the document, Elsie, that you and I started.
This one, right?
Yeah, exactly, that one. So that's linked in the meeting notes. And that doc has, if you scroll down, it's got questions we'd like to get answered and some of the metrics that might be helpful. So it's kind of a brainstorm, but I think we should start from questions rather than from metrics, because sometimes we may end up with the wrong metric. Antoine, who was working on this a while ago, kind of shed some light on how this can be tricky. If we look at like average time to LGTM, for example, like picking that metric out, it seems useful initially, but there are some areas where it can be tricky. So instead I kind of rephrased it and like, what are we actually trying to get answered? And so I have a list of questions there. So if you guys want to take a look and contribute, that'd be great. We also have, these are a little bit stale. I think relevant metrics is from when we did the brainstorm about a year ago.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of things down there. So please help me organize the doc and feel free to take a look and add to it. And I'm going to share this with the broader community as well. I want to get input from other SIGs and SIG leads, as well as, anyone on K8 Dev.
Great. Okay. So yes, please jump in and give us some feedback on that doc.
The other thing I wanted to mention was one of the things we talked about was just like merge rate. And one of the efforts in the project has been splitting the repo out, right? So we're trying to have multiple repos, and as a result, it's possible, probably likely, that the commit rate drops in the main repo because people will be committing elsewhere. But we want to make sure that we can see an overall increase in velocity, or at least at least it's staying stable. So GitHub doesn't allow us to see commit rate across multiple repos or across an org. So I added that to Velodrome. If you want to take a look at velodrome.k8s.io, you can see there are multiple repos listed now. I think it's here. I'll add the link to the chat. And I'm also trying to, I opened an issue in test infra. I wasn't sure, it might have been in community. I'm not sure which the best place is. But I noticed that a number of people are emailing the membership list with, I think I've done enough, but how do I know if I've done enough? Here's some PRs that I've written. Here's some PRs that I reviewed. I just kind of collected them. I'd really like to be able to get a dashboard that showed people's contributions, especially if they're not in the org or if they're not a reviewer, or like things that will help us make decisions about the contributor ladder. And I think that would make sense to kind of go with Velodrome as well, since Velodrome's got a database already with all the GitHub data. The question is just how can we show it effectively and efficiently? So I'm working on that as well. I don't know if I've shared that dashboard yet, because I think the only thing that I have is like number of issues that you've commented on or total number of comments, and I haven't been able to break it out by org member yet, but I'm working on that right now.
Great. Thank you, Garrett. And then I think
I had a comment real quick.
Yeah. I can tie into why that could be useful later.
Cool. Yeah, let's chat later.
Cool. So our second objective is to also start working on standardizing labels across repos. Has anybody made any progress on this since our last meeting?
So Lucas, the original author of the code that was going to make this change, sort of got sidebanded by some other things for the CNCF. His employer came back and said, "Hey, okay, I can push this forward. I think pretty much everything is ready to go." And I believe where we're at is that we need to actually come up with a rollout plan and then execute on it. And we need the code the PR to finally get merged. And I believe we're waiting on Joe Finney's final approval for that.
Okay.
But I'm going to defer to Garrett for a final say on that.
Yeah, I've been shepherding this, so I haven't been actually doing the review. Aaron, thanks for actually looking at the code and reviewing it, and thanks to Joe as well. Yeah, so Aaron, I think LGTM, the subset of labels that are going to go in, we're waiting for, as Aaron said, the final review from Joe, and then the rollout plan. I think what Aaron meant by that is we're not going to propagate labels to every repo. I think there's like 40 in the Kubernetes main org, and we don't want to just shotgun it in case something goes wrong. So we might try with like test infra and community and like maybe a few of the smaller repos, and go from there.
Yeah, 47. And I just wanted to make sure we don't have to undo a change against 47 repos. So my open question is, I don't know who has the credentials or privileges to be able to actually execute on rolling this out. Do you know if this requires somebody who's got credentials I'm assuming it's somebody who can get access to an OAuth key that can actually write labels against all the repos, and it's somebody who can deploy to probably the same cluster that Munge GitHub is running on?
Yeah. So I think we can talk to Joe or Cole from SIG Testing about that. I think they generally do work with that cluster. I might have access to it as well, but things have moved a lot with Munge GitHub like in the last few months. So I'll have to verify.
All right. If you don't get to him, I'll try and get to him, and we'll see where we go from there. But yeah, it's my concern is I think Lucas thinks he's done the coding, and now the ball is in our court to find an owner to actually push the rollout forward, make sure things look good, continue rolling it out to the rest of the repos. Hey, we get to brag about how awesome this is, so on and so forth.
Okay.
But I will
at the final step of rolling it out.
Yeah, at least as an action item, I can make sure I go poke the appropriate people to ensure that the PRs that I linked there get merged.
Awesome. Yeah, why don't it sounds like a good start. And then email shoot something out to the mailing list if you need additional help.
Great. And then it looks like, Aaron, you have volunteered for a lot of the third section, which is ensure the org-wide policies are clearly documented and easily discoverable.
Right. So actually documenting those labels, that's somewhere down my stack right now.
Yeah.
The PR requirements, so I'm kind of sitting here scratching my head that there was some issue that just asked whether or not requiring an issue to be linked to a PR. Somebody wanted to make that configurable. And then that shot off into this huge discussion about hey, should we even have this requirement in the first place? I feel like there's some uncertainty in the community around this, and I would like to find a way to get the right stakeholders together. And I believe maybe it was this SIG. Sorry, I forget where I discussed these things now. It came down to this requirement only makes sense if there's a tool that's actually consuming these links and generating useful release notes out of them, a la the draft that Don Chen presented during the community meeting a little while ago that actually aggregated release notes from PRs under the different issues and whatnot. So if that's happening, it should be required, and I will gladly update the pull request docs. If it's not, pull request docs are fine as is. So action item here is figure out if it's required.
Jace is on the call. He's actually a member of the release team, which I think this is where, since they're the ones usually responsible for generating the release notes at the end, I think that kind of makes sense. Either SIG release or the release team for making kind of the call there.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know enough about all the minutia behind what happens there to speak authoritatively on it.
Yeah, it must have been the release SIG where we took that action item where we got to figure out if somebody's actually going to, Don laid out a really cool plan for it. Everybody said yes. So the question is if there's anybody who's actually staffing that effort to improve release notes generation based on these issue links, because if not, it doesn't seem like it's being incredibly helpful as a requirement. I don't have the data offhand to see how many people are like /approve no issuing everything, but it seems relatively prevalent.
I noticed you put that in the description actually, and so I did kind of a blanket shot. I just figured I'd do like a random sample. So I looked at PRs and I filtered out the ones that were extra small because those are most likely to be trivial, and a large number of those had approved no issue. But as the PRs got a little bit larger, a lot of them were referencing issues. I can't give you an exact percentage, but I don't think people were misusing it and just, for PRs that needed release notes or that needed refer to issues. I'm not sure that I saw that. So take a look and let me know if people actually are. We should probably get some data on that to see if it's really being misused.
Yeah, if you got queries or something you use for that, that would be cool. Because I mean, it does seem like the right compromise is that should be required at a certain threshold. And maybe that threshold is PR size or something of that nature.
Okay.
Anyway, so work in progress on documenting that. The owners thing, I did finally make progress on documenting owners files and how they are used today. I could sort of call it done there, but where I'm focusing most of my efforts now is how do we actually prune owners files, make sure they're populated with interested individuals and enough of them to actually make sure that the owners process is working as intended. This kind of ties into the contributor ladder climbing. So I have documented how the process works. Now I, as a human, am trying to figure out what questions I'm asking myself as I add and remove people, and I will use that to pull requests into the doc for that. As far as grooming, contributing.md and all that stuff, I want to, oh wait, that's George anyway. George. George.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Oh, there we go.
You're good now. We can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I just lost my tab. Hold on 1 second.
It's cool.
I minimize Chrome and then I'm lost for like 10 minutes. Hold on.
You had
No worries.
the
We
last
can
thing. Oh, go for it.
this break. I forgot to ask for somebody to take notes, and I'm really bad at that. I'm really sorry. Can somebody volunteer to take notes?
I got it.
I can't
Great.
even find the notes.
Thank
I can't
you.
even find the notes. What's happening? Okay. Where are we? Hold on. I'm scrolling halfway.
We're on E of section 3.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry about that. So I've got the first pull for support.md is in there and it's being PR'd. It's gone through a few reviews, so now I'm just kind of waiting for the auto merge thing to auto merge that. And then I plan to go back and start doing the deep linking bits. So that's going well.
Great. And then Sadev and Aaron, it looks like you volunteered for section F, best practice reviews. Any progress on that?
Yes, hi. And I think, Aaron provided a link of what's out there right now, last time, as you can see in his comment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that looks, I actually wasn't aware of the link when I wrote this comment. That actually answers a lot of my questions there, with the comment. I think it's clearly mentioning all the different roles, right? Just new contributors, org member, reviewer, assignee, and owner. So, Aaron, I mean, I'm not sure what do you think, but I think it looks that community membership .md file, I think that provides a good coverage of all those things.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's sort of why I posted the link. There is a to-do in that doc or a note that says that it's not final.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the purposes of what's the ladder look like, I think this document satisfies that intent. I will still be paying some attention to this document and poking, I think Phil Whitrock was the original author of this, over the next little while as I look to figure out if I want to add people to the reviewers list, if I want to go nominate people, will I be able to point them at this doc, and will it make sense to them? Will it make sense to me? But I think we can call it pretty much done. There will just be continued polish.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. Actually, on the top of that doc, it says it's in progress. So I was wondering myself too, and just to keep an eye on that if somebody's already actually tracking it and adding it, because it says it's a doc in progress. So
yeah, I feel like the intent for that was to describe that it is a living document, not necessarily a hard line set in stone, as we figure out whether or not some of the raw numbers used for metrics on like amount of time participating, amount of pull requests, what exactly substantive means, are things that will need to be iterated upon. So I don't know, maybe we can take the action item to see what it takes to get that out of in progress.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure. Yeah, let's come back to this later and see see if the story's changed.
Okay. Our fourth goal was to promote project health and stability, and George has this one. Take it away, George.
Yeah, I'm going to go out of order first because one's dependent on the other.
Okay.
I announced the office hours for the users. That's going to be in 2 weeks. So I posted all the information there on the user mailing list, and I've been collecting new volunteers and stuff. One thing I want to say, I was really, really happy and impressed by the senior people who signed up to help users. So like Brendan Burns, Tim Hawking, Clayton, like all these like high level folks like took the time to write themselves down to volunteer to help like new users. And I think that's really awesome and something we should like always strive to like help somebody out. As a result of collecting that, I'm able to have a better idea of sub-objective A there, which is kind of doing a user support rotation. That's just basically a rotating version of that, except done on Slack. So I've been hanging out in Kubernetes users and novice now, and I'm finding a lot of people who might not be like core contributors, like writing core Go code, but they do DevOps at work and they maintain their Kubernetes cluster. So I'm going to target that audience as kind of like an untapped level of expertise that I think we should definitely tap into. No progress on socializing /commands, and I haven't even started on Stack Exchange Health yet. So. Okay.
Thank you for writing up that doc and getting the office hours going. And then our last point was support the release team. And this is Jago and Jace. I think they're on the call.
I'm here. So let me just take a quick peek at this. As you can imagine, well, so just a quick disclaimer. I've been sick last week and still sick with salmonella, so that's been
no
fun journey. So let me look and see what this is. Yeah, this is something. It just keeps coming up over and over again, and I kind of put this in at the end of the agenda too, just to talk about this. But we actually haven't done any specific work on this, and I think that's unfortunate because this is probably one of the things that slipped while I was sick. I will take a look at this and connect with Jago and find out what is happening here, because right now I'm not really sure. So I apologize. It's been a rough week.
I feel like
totally understandable.
on the implementation of some of the status labels, I think Mariu's working on some automation related to that. At least I saw him pop up in SIG testing.
Yeah, that's what I saw as well.
Maybe we can encourage SIGs though to start thinking about the approving issues in the milestone. I mean, Jace, you probably want to start thinking about how you want to get signal. I know we're far from the release date, but one of the things that's been a challenge for every release, you can talk to Dan or Caleb or Phil or whoever, is figuring out the go, no go signal. And a lot of the times I think people have used every issue in the milestone. And it's nice when SIGs have formally accepted that that is an issue and it's something that they're working on. So you might want to consider socializing that a little bit and making that well known that that's going to be the policy, and you want them to apply the approve for milestone, and maybe start thinking about the automation that's going to be necessary for that. If
that's the stuff that Mari's working on, where it's going to kick stuff out if it doesn't have the appropriate set of labels, and it's going to post a comment that describes why it's been kicked out and what labels they can apply if they would like it added back in, I believe. But I agree, we have some socializing to do.
Who's doing that? Maru?
Yep, Maru.
Yep.
And yeah, that's in progress.
Did I miss an email to Cade's dev?
That was SIG. Was that it was either Slack or in one of the SIG release meetings. That
Yeah, it was definitely a SIG release meeting, and Phil has a proposal, or had a proposal that Maru's now implementing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think you'll see that email go out when it's actually live, right? But I can go start digging for that proposal. Let me find it.
Yeah, I think in terms of go no go, that the issues in the milestone thing actually makes the most sense. I don't know what else we could use that would be any better.
It's like literally the easiest thing you can do.
Right, exactly.
Okay, moving on. George, GitHub Teams?
Yeah, so Tim brought this up. Tim St. Clair brought this up to me, and with GitHub landing a bunch of features, I know I haven't heard us talk about Teams recently, so I figured I would bring it back up again. But I don't know how many of you've seen that we have 267 teams in the Kubernetes org. Well, Aaron probably knows.
Each SIG has like 7 teams associated.
Yeah, and like
if you filter it down to the number of SIGs, it's only like 215.
Yeah, so I was looking, and like if you see, hold on, let me see if I can share my screen real quick. Oh, I guess someone else is sharing their screen. So I looked at some of the SIGs.
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, and if you look at the list of members, hold on, let me see if I can share the right. I apparently can't share. So I'm using Linux, never mind. So if you look at the list of groups and SIGs, like a lot of them have just like the same people, like all the way down. And then like, if you change the page, you see it even lines up like their hacker got you. So it's like perfectly aligned. So the question was like, is this like the most efficient? Like, I'm still kind of unclear as to like, so Tim's main point, like as a SIG co-lead, I don't understand why I have to manage like all of these lists and things like it just seems like a hot mess to me. And I was like, I don't get it either. So I figured I would bring it up.
Yeah, so that was part of an effort to better manage the communication streams, primarily around GitHub notifications, to segregate them into different sections. And as a person who has gone through the process of setting up all those lists and teams, it is kind of a pain, particularly now you have to create like 5 or 7 like bot user accounts, which is a real pain. You have to like, because they each need to be added to their own list, so they can get their emails sent to the right Google group. And then you now have to also manage the 2-factor auth for each of those 5 to 7 GitHub bot users. So it's all kind of a pain. What I'm going to try an experiment in SIG release and have one bot user added to one SIG release team and see just what the volume of messages is there, and see if it's even reasonable for perhaps other SIGs to try and report back. But at least that's my goal there.
Yeah, I'll second the agony of creating all that stuff and creating a recoverable 2FA thing. So I created a new Google account with a Google phone number attached, which allowed recoverable 2FA through that. Nasty.
Yeah, I use Twilio and Authy.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, But the spirit of what the spirit of the requirement though is, I think, really valid, which is trying to increase awareness and visibility of those things. So if you can accomplish that some other way, great.
Yeah, I'd love people to test that, because actually Brian Grant and I, we have created that procedure half a year ago in December and January. And it seems that so many people have some concerns regarding that. Speaking about the two-factor authentication, the best way that we have proposed is to use the backup codes to that can be easily shared with some people. But anyway, so if you are a SIG owner, and it would be great if not a single SIG owner, but multiple SIG owners will test if it really works. Because for me personally, it works better than it has been before. So please raise your concerns, provide your suggestions. How can we solve that in a better way? And really great.
So I totally come back to what you have to measure is, are the right people getting notified at the right time? And I hate to do this on camera, but my rant about the teams is nobody told me what the teams were for. The team names are not self-descriptive. As somebody who is in the project, it makes no sense to me and is not clear which of these 6 teams I should notify. As a member of the Kubernetes organization, I have the luxury of seeing how many people are in which team, and sorry, I'm just going to notify the team that has the most members in it. As somebody who created the teams in the first place, yeah, I pretty much just added the same people to all the teams and wanted to try and find some way to incentivize others to add themselves to the right teams, and that never happened. Also, I don't know about you guys, but in creating these things, like Google eventually thought I was a robot, and I started to have to select which of these pictures are shops. It was great. And nobody explained to me what
I was there too.
Nobody gave me that definition. We were supposed to just sort of, as an experiment, try this out, and it's super duper unclear. Now, in theory, the data's out there, right? Because all of these Google groups should exist, you should be able to go and see at least the traffic on those, so you could see how often they've been notified and how much traffic sits there. I have no idea how you could measure the response. And I get the sense that there are some groups that really do find it valuable to notify high traffic individuals just for the purpose of design reviews to make sure they don't get pinged on every little pull request or every little typo fix. So I think some people find it valuable, but I'm not sure any of that representation is here today. I would certainly be in favor of killing the teams entirely, but I feel like,
Yeah, because it feels, or maybe making it either opt-in, because I'm looking at SIG Instrumentation right now, and all of their groups have the same 9 people in them.
Yep.
And then I've noticed also it kind of tends to lead to noise and bug report where it's like, oh no, SIG network -MISC, I meant to put in SIG. And then you get people just responding with CC and then another group. And then it's like, wait a minute. The same people, so I don't know if it's more of people are just, and this is anecdotal. So I mostly only looked at SIG cluster lifecycle, but it felt like a lot of people were using it like a forum bump, where it was like, ding.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, it depends on how people are consuming notifications. The intent is, instead of using GitHub's UI, you just ignore that because it's totally useless. And it kind of is. For anybody who receives more than 100 notifications a day, ain't no way that's going to be useful to you. So instead, you start having them all forwarded to email, and maybe you can start setting up rules so that depending on which Google group these notifications are coming in on, they land in certain places, and you've got a system that works for you to use this. But I don't know. Other thing, just hard numbers, at least as of, I think it was a week or 2 ago, I got annoyed to try and figure it out. There are 154 SIG teams in GitHub. There are 476 people in the Kubernetes org. Of those, 87 are bot users or mirror users. So that really means there are 389 people to be spread across 154 teams. Does that seem backwards to anybody?
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be a better way to do this. I don't know if it's calling a GitHub person or, there's, I don't know. So I would like to help with this. Can we kind of maybe nail down a little bit more actionable items for the notes that I can?
I mean,
so Anybody here has any suggestions? How can we implement this model?
Experiments are great. I think Caleb's doing an experiment of we're just not going to do that and see how that works for us as a SIG. I think we have a large volume of data out there if anybody is interested to see how often people are actually using the different groups. It could be that the result we come back with is people are pretty much just using one team, probably the MISC team, since that has the most people. And then we come to an open question of, does that mean we should just go back to using MISC teams, or does this mean we need to re-educate on the teams, or do we need to rethink the teams? But I think I personally would be a fan of having that discussion with some data to back it.
Okay.
Or I don't know, maybe there's enough pain and frustration. I've just heard from multiple people who've gone through the creation of this the process of creating this stuff. Doesn't seem like any of us find it useful, both in the administrative side and in the actual using of it side. But we're not necessarily the end consumers of this. I feel like that's the class of people that aren't being represented, which is why I'm asking that we find a way to gather data on it.
Yeah, because I wonder if you'd make it like an opt-out thing for the SIGs, but then you can't be like, hey, everybody use the same consistent labels and all that stuff, but when it comes to this kind of stuff, do what you want.
So
like, I wonder if that will just lead to...
There's hierarchy to teams now. You can have sub-teams. So I think the purpose initially, Ihor, correct me if I'm wrong, was to like make it so there was a subset of a SIG dedicated to bug triage and a subset dedicated to reviewing PRs and things like that. And so various parts of a SIG could be like more specialized. And that was the point of all the teams. It may not be how it's being used.
The problem with that hierarchical model is if I at Kubernetes SIG contribx, I hit everybody. And let's say there's a person in contribx who is only interested in ever receiving proposals. They don't want to receive notifications about anything else, just proposals. If I hit the whole group, it's noise to them. That's
but here, if you're hitting a group that is specified only on proposals, on the feature proposals, or like on some specific requests, so exactly that people who have signed into that group will receive this notification and they will react to your message. It was actually the initial idea of that. If I'm working only on bugs, on like bug triaging, I will receive notification regarding that. And if I'm not working, I won't receive. And so.
Right. Also, we do have some data on like the person who only wants proposals but not the other stuff. But I'm looking at most of the SIGs and actually like, it seems like everyone is just in every group. So
yeah, that's the different question,
right?
So
like,
relative difference from our like initial ideas,
right? Like, is person who only wants to do API reviews a use case if everyone's just joining every single group anyway? That doesn't feel like you're not saving anything over having just one huge group.
So the question is, do we design for the state of the world now, or do we design for the state of the world that we want and try and figure out how to get us there? And I think that was the idea with this. Like, it was good intention. It doesn't seem to get us to the state that we want.
Right.
But can we alter it so that we get to this state where people are able to get more specialized notifications? So like Caleb said, that he's not getting notified 10,000 times or however many times throughout the whole repo. You only get what you care about.
At 50,000 and I'm proud.
Yeah. And I also know, like, the people I know that are overwhelmed by notifications, it's like email bankruptcy. They don't
just a filter delete. Yeah.
They just look, if you need something, you ping me on Slack personally, and then I'll go like I feel like if we're trying to optimize for them, that they've already kind of, I don't want to say given up, but like, you know, they've got their own. They've got, like, I've tried some tools. I tried this tool that gives you like a real-time view, like an inbox view. And I used that for a week, and then I was like, eh.
So just to throw out a straw man, what if you were to put out a proposal that's, you know, declaring GitHub team bankruptcy? Can we please just get rid of all the other teams and go back to one team per SIG? What objections do you think would be raised, and what data or arguments do you think you would need to have prepared? What sort of plan do you think you would want to put forward?
I think I would have the argument that once we have SIGs owning one or more repositories, you probably want at least 3 teams to map to GitHub's ACL structure. I mean, probably at least 2 teams. One for admin rights on that repo, one with just, pull and push, well, just with push access. So I guess the number is definitely not, it's probably not 1, definitely not 7, but somewhere around 1 or 2, I think.
Well, what if we'll follow the new feature by the GitHub with the subteams or something like that Gareth has mentioned?
It's had a limitation that wouldn't work for us. I forgot what it was, though.
That's what the hierarchy doesn't allow for specificity. If you want to notify the bugs people, you can notify just the bugs people. If you don't know who you want to notify, you would notify the whole team. That would still hit the bugs people. So from the bugs people's perspective, it doesn't make the signal for their membership on that team any stronger or less strong. Does that make sense?
But is that a flaw in our culture then? Or is it something that we can change through culture by asking people to mention more specifically, by making it clear what the subteams are? If there was a standard set of subteams for every SIG, sort of like there are standard feature requests, bug fixes, etc., would that be enough to address the issue, or do you think people are just going to always mention?
But then we already have a standard set of teams for every SIG.
I think, though, at least the first step should be some experiments and some experience reports about how those experiments went.
Caleb, this is Dims. I had something to add here. On the PR side, isn't it the problem that people are not able to reach their approvers and reviewers rather than specific SIGs? And for each PR, we dynamically calculate who are the possible people who have to approve this or review this. So is there a mismatch between trying to use the SIGs, but the approval list of approvers and list of reviewers is totally different from what the person needs?
Totally agree. And I totally agree. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit offline if you've got time, sometime later today.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
So I've been playing with things, and I love experiments.
Right, but bottom line is pinging people on PRs or bugs or Slack is not working right now. It's just too many people are frustrated, especially people who are trying to come in from outside and not people who already work in established teams. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, this is something I tried to highlight in that owner's doc, and I feel like needs broader messaging, like notifications are dev null for a lot of people, whether that's pinging the person directly or using a GitHub team. There are at least a few people here who use K8s.reviews or Kubernetes PR dashboard as their way of keeping up with the state of the world, and that'll keep track of PRs that have been assigned to them and where they're at in some sort of pseudo-state machine that represents LGTMs and approvals and whether or not tests are passing. And making sure that your PR shows up on the right person's dashboard at that time is a much higher signal way of getting their attention. Although, yeah, in my experience, I've still had to go nag people personally on Slack, which is unfortunate. But it's that assigning people seems to be like a less noisy way to put it on a less noisy dashboard for them right now. I mean, if it's not clear, I'm this close to just saying, like, screw it, let's just put forth the proposal and present it at community that we drop all the other teams and just go to a NIST team. I just feel like that's not something I have the bandwidth to do right now, because all the other action items I've got for the 1.8 roadmap. And it just seems like there should be a bit more of a plan. But I would be happy if we dropped them all today. I think we would probably be just fine.
So I'm thinking that we really need SIG leads, and the people who are highly involved in SIGs who are on the receiving end of all this stuff. So maybe the action should be like, just gathering data on the dev list. Like, we don't want it to turn into, yeah, I hate this. Let's get rid of, I'm trying to think of a way to make it so we can get feedback from the leads without it devolving to like raise your hand if you're just deleting them anyway. Haha. Like, that doesn't really get us anywhere.
Which of these teams are you actually using?
Okay.
That'd be a useful question. I don't know. Again, I kind of go back to like when we added all those SIG labels and we've added the need SIG automation, that does seem to have steered people towards adding SIG labels. That's been a pretty decent way of making sure that SIGs at least have a bucket of issues. I don't know if it's necessarily doing a good job of notifying SIGs of that bucket of issues. That seems to be up to each SIG to take care of.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good question.
Can you guys hear me?
If we have a consistent labeling structure.
Somebody was on the phone trying to
sorry.
jump in.
Hey, this is Chris Luciano. I'm not sure if it shows my name or not. This was similar to something that I proposed, like, I can't remember how many meetings ago. I'm one of the people that also finds the notifications hard to use. And I think someone may have alluded to it, but there's this program called Octobox that I started to kind of use. I've displayed it in a style similar to like an email or Google Groups format, but you really are forced to watch the entire repository to try to figure out what things are important, since even once the SIG labels are applied, the triager per group still needs to go in there somehow and figure out which ones are relevant and either reassign and then notify the right people. And there's unless you're really ingrained in each individual meeting, you might not know whom owns those individual things. But I do find having like I think the MISC team seems to be either you don't know if there's an actual bug or if it's not a pull request, so you don't use the pull request thing, or maybe you're just interested in what's going on with the SIG. So you follow MISC or you join MISC just to get an understanding of maybe arbitrary issues. It's not really proposing anything. I'm just wondering if we did consider extending Kubernetes to maybe utilize issues, and that would also help with some of the, there was that giant proposal to condense all of these teams into individual mailing lists, but it seems like there's only about half of the SIGs that have actually done that.
Yeah, I think SIG testing would be a good channel to ask that stuff. Ryan Hitchman is basically really open to creative ideas to use Kubernetes to better provide actionable data. And Kubernetes was actually what I was referring to when I talked about just an alternative to the use of GitHub notifications. Just like throw those out entirely and look solely at PRs that have your name on them. You can even use it to stalk your potential approvers and see which ones seem to have a crap ton of PRs associated with them, and maybe you want to go find another approver to go get your PR approved. This isn't necessarily something I've wanted to write down on the owner's doc just yet, because I think it's a workaround for unhealthy level of approvers and owners.
Can you put his name in the notes? I sort of miss his name. The maintainer of Kubernetes, or the Kubernetes idea person.
I got it.
Yeah, I started using Octobox and then just kind of dropped it after a while. I just ended up overwhelmed with the entire organization's notifications.
It's only really useful too if someone has a super succinct yet detailed title for whatever their issue or pull request is. Because it's just like reorganize this thing. You can't really tell just by first glance if that's something I should care about.
And yes, back to Morgan's super earlier point about there not being enough people in the org to actually staff these teams. That's that's being worked on. Like, I'm trying to tackle that in the small by looking at it through the lens of owners files and stuff, but I do plan on coming up with ways to identify and nominate people who may not have thought to nominate themselves, and get that ball rolling, because that is extraordinarily necessary to balance out this problem of not enough people to satisfy this load.
Okay. Jace, I think you addressed the next point in the agenda earlier. Did you want to speak any more to that, or are you good?
Actually, we kind of do need to hit this because it's a problem right now that Dims and I were kind of chatting back and forth about this morning. But essentially, there's a whole slew of PRs that are in various states that are basically stalled, and I don't know exactly how to deal with this, because I mean the right answer is that SIGs would go through their backlog of PRs and issues every time they meet and resolve these, or make sure that people get a ping to do a rebase or whatever is necessary to move forward. I don't see that happening, and so what are we going to do to get these things unstuck? And by these things, I mean the 3 cases that I called out in my item there. The sound of crickets. I love it.
Well, I've at least highlighted the needs okay to test thing in the past as a sign that you may be dealing with a new contributor or somebody who hasn't been through the process before, so you can help shepherd and watch that PR in general. That's pretty low effort. The stalled things is tangled and tricky.
Yeah. So, I mean, we got to find some answer to this, because unless we can find somebody to do some work on the bot to fix the ... owners problem, because that seems like an issue, or owners files with no approvers, or somebody did some shell foo to show that out. I think it was Aaron, and basically there's a ton of these that are broken.
There are like 100 or so of those files in Kubernetes package subdirectories. So I would open that up as an issue in the test infra repo, and let's escalate the priority of that and get that worked, because that's not right.
Well, I think that owners files without approvers, but just reviewers, was intended to work. The automation may not be doing the right thing by pulling the approvers from a higher level node in the tree. So it was designed to give people who were lower the opportunity to review a PR and sign off on it, and then basically at a higher level you would just approve.
That's what we expect to be happening, but what I heard is we have documented evidence of that not happening. So the ask there is just make sure you've got the documented evidence, open up an issue, and let's escalate that, because that's the expected behavior, and if it's not acting that way, that's a problem.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So that's what needs to be done there. Is there any? I mean, I was kind of contemplating taking the burden of just going through manually and looking at a lot of these and updating labels where needed, but I feel like that's not a good answer for a lot of reasons. But
I have done that in the past here or there, and I do believe that every little bit helps. But I think if you do that, it's also useful to do that with an eye towards how can I systematize this, document it so other people can do it, or describe it in an easy enough way that it could be automated.
Right. Okay. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you, Jace. And then, George, I think you also hit on the next item earlier. So are you good with that? Great. Okay. Does anybody else have something for the last 6 minutes that they wanted to talk about really quickly? Nothing? Great. Okay. So we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.